The observation deck of the Valcor Prime hummed with the low rumble of alien voices, each species represented in the galactic convoy contributing to the cacophony. Clara Hayes stood near the transperisteel viewport, her small frame dwarfed by the towering forms of Corinthians, Varaxians, and Skeller warriors. In her arms, cradled like a child's toy, was Nyx, a sleek black cat whose emerald eyes surveyed the gathering with unreadable intensity. "Is that a companion creature?" asked Commander Vexthor, his mandibles clicking in what Clara had learned was amusement. The Corinthian's exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights as he leaned down, his massive form casting a shadow over the human girl. "This is Nyx," Clara replied quietly, her fingers absently stroking the cat's midnight fur. "She's my friend." A ripple of laughter spread through the assembled aliens. To them, humanity was already an oddity. Soft-skinned, fragile beings who had somehow clawed their way into the galactic community through sheer stubbornness and ingenuity. But this? A human bringing a pet to a military expedition into contested Zone 7? A friend? Vexthor's translator crackled with barely suppressed mirth. "Little human, we travel to face the dread swarms. Warbeasts that have torn apart fortified positions. And you bring that?" Nyx's tail flicked once. Clara felt the subtle tension in the cat's muscles, but said nothing. "Humans," muttered a Varaxian lieutenant, his scales shimmering with disdain. "They bond with anything that moves. Next they'll bring their microbes and call them battle companions." More laughter. Clara's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. She'd learned in her 3 months aboard the Coalition fleet that arguing was pointless. Humans were the newcomers, the unproven species. Every action was scrutinized, every choice questioned. Nyx, however, had no such patience. The cat's eyes narrowed to slits, fixing on the Varaxian with an intensity that should have been impossible for a creature weighing barely 4 kilograms. The alarm came 6 hours later, during the night cycle. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors as Clara stumbled from her quarters, Nyx darting ahead with supernatural grace. The cat's movements were fluid, purposeful, nothing like the lazy lounging she displayed in safer moments. All combat personnel to defense stations. The ship's AI blared in multiple languages. "Swarm breach on Deck 9, Warbeast detected." Clara's heart hammered as she raced toward the armory. She'd been through combat simulations, had qualified with standard plasma weapons despite her small stature. But a Warbeast? Those were the stuff of nightmares, 3-meter-tall monstrosities bred by the dread swarms, creatures of chitin and rage that could tear through bulkheads. She rounded a corner and froze. The Warbeast stood in the corridor ahead, its 6 legs planted wide, mandibles dripping with ichor. It had already killed. 2 Skeller warriors lay motionless against the walls. The creature's compound eyes swiveled, fixing on Clara with predatory focus. "Run, human!" Someone screamed from a side passage. Clara's legs wouldn't move. The Warbeast tensed, preparing to charge. 3 tons of killing machine focused on one fragile girl. Then Nyx was there. The black cat didn't meow or hiss. She simply moved. One moment she was at Clara's feet. The next, she was a midnight blur launching through the air. The Warbeast had no time to react. Nyx struck like a comet, small body colliding with the creature's head with impossible force. The sound was thunder in the confined space. The Warbeast screamed, a sound Clara hadn't known such creatures could make. It thrashed, trying to shake off the black shape that had latched onto its skull. But Nyx was already in motion, claws that suddenly seemed far too long and sharp, tearing through chitin armor that should have been impenetrable. Clara watched in stunned disbelief as her small companion, her cat, moved. With the precision of a trained assassin, Nyx's strikes targeted joints and sensory organs with surgical accuracy. When the Warbeast tried to slam her against the wall, she twisted midair, using the momentum to drive deeper strikes into its neck plating. "Impossible," Commander Vexthor whispered, arriving with a security team. His weapon hung forgotten in his grip as he witnessed the spectacle. The Warbeast, creature of genetic engineering and warfare, began to slow. Green blood pooled beneath it. Nyx had severed something critical. Clara could see it in the way the creature's movements became sluggish, uncoordinated. With one final, almost casual movement, Nyx found the gap between head and thorax plates. Her claws? No, Clara realized they were more like blades now, punched through. The Warbeast shuddered once and collapsed, its massive bulk crashing to the deck with a resounding boom. Nyx landed softly beside it, licking one paw as if she'd just dispatched a particularly troublesome mouse. Not a scratch marked her sleek black fur. The corridor fell silent except for the emergency klaxons. What? Vexthor's translator struggled with his shock. What is that creature? Clara knelt and Nyx patted over, rubbing against her leg with a purr. To anyone watching, she was simply a cat again. Small, harmless, affectionate. I told you, Clara said softly, meeting the commander's compound eyes. This is Nyx, she's my friend. The story spread through the fleet within hours. The human girl's companion creature that had single-handedly brought down a warbeast. Scientists requested samples. Warriors demanded to know where they could acquire such creatures. And the Varaxian lieutenant who'd mocked Clara publicly apologized. But Clara knew the truth that none of them could fully grasp. Humanity hadn't domesticated cats. They'd entered into a partnership with apex predators who chose to coexist with them. Creatures whose ancestors had evolved to hunt, to kill, to survive in a harsh world. Earth cats were small, yes. Soft and affectionate, certainly. But they were also perfect killing machines, honed by millions of years of evolution, who simply chose to be gentle with those they loved. As Clara sat in her quarters that night, Nyx curled on her lap, purring contentedly, she smiled. Let the galaxy learn what humanity had always known. Underestimate Earth's creatures at your peril. Even the small ones, especially the small ones.